All right, so we've got Justin Udy on the call here today, and I don't really know if I sort of let you in on what this is all going to be about. It's basically the good, the bad, the ugly of growing a real estate team. And before we start, I've got to ask you the question, Justin Udy, are you prepared to share the good, the bad, and the ugly about your business growth journey?
I do.
Otherwise, I would have shut the whole call down. I think
So,
there's so much value in just realness, and you've sort of been through some of the ups and downs here recently, and I know I'm excited to hear about those and just to share those openly, what you might have done differently, and all that good stuff. So before we kind of get into some of the questions, as you've been in business, actually, just give us a little bit of a background. A little bit about you personally, what the family life is like, when you got into business, and kind of give us the couple-minute summary of you.
cool. So I've been in the business for 13 years. In fact, within like 3 months of getting married, my wife started a new job. I graduated from college. That was basically through the September 11th. I ended up not having any jobs out there. My buddy called me and said, "Hey, come do loans with us." So I did loans. I was I was so used to living on like 10 grand a year. I made like 10 grand that month. And so I was buying properties and flipping them. I had referred about 15 people to my agent. And this is after like a 2-year time frame. And 1 month I referred him literally like 15 people. And he's like, "Hey, why don't you get your license?" And so that's when I got fully licensed. My wife's been super supportive, loves me despite how much and time we all put in. They have 2 kids. One is 10 and 7. And started kind of building a team. I had met you, Lars, at a conference. That year, I think I had done 67 deals. So our journey kind of went from the year I did 48 deals on my own with a part-time assistant. I was like, dude, I am either completely out, or I have to either figure this out or I'm out of this business. And then we just decided to move forward. I went from 48 to 67 to 101 to 151 to 206. That's when I stepped out of production. We did 207. And then this year, we've had tons of changes. We thought we were going to do closer to 230, and now we're maybe even going to probably hit maybe around the same amount, But it's been transitions, and I don't feel bad about it. The good thing is, one of the things we always say on the team is just there's no breakdowns, there's no breakthroughs, and there's been a ton of breakdowns, and they always help you. And I think that's a lesson learned.
Awesome. So let's go back to those. So you kind of gave a little bit of the growth journey in terms of transactions. Let's go back to when we first met. I remember it, and it was at a conference. I only went to like one session of that conference, and I sat next to you, and I remember leaving that conference thinking very specifically, like, the reason I went to the conference was to meet you. I'm not even joking around. It was the reason we were meant to meet. And talk about the different phases of growth, right? As you go from, we met when you were about, you were in that ramp phase, 2 to 6 sides, right? The 6 sides with not a lot of structure in place. It's can't really scale it all that much to going to scale, which is 6 to 12, and lead is, where you're in now and kind of getting out of production. But talk about what it was like to go from each of those phases of growth, and what were the challenges, and did you feel prepared for each phase? What were the lessons that you learned? How did you push through? Kind of break it down for us, and I'll help you go through each of the phases.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that, because I'm actually bringing that up too, so I can look through it, because the funny thing is, it's almost like now, like sometimes I'm like, man, I haven't learned anything. And then somebody will ask you one question, you have 10 things to say about it, like you just grow so much, but it's this never ending learning process, right? You're learning how to produce, you're learning how to lead, you're learning how to manage. And there's really no cap. But what I was going to say is so if I was to look at kind of the layout of the from one part to the next, and I apologize, I'm trying to actually bring up kind of just those quick details. But so in the beginning, you're just thinking, man, I just want to get out of production. And I think that seventh level mentality is very healthy because it drives you. One of the things that I've talked to with Stacy about is once you hit that seventh level, the problem is you still need a purpose or you're worth nothing to nobody. You can literally abandon your business and it can implode. And so having, not only that, having just that seventh level business in mind is very important. But I think as you start approaching that, you have to start putting new goals in place, because if it is at that point, I hate to say it is pretty selfish because you're wanting to get out. But then you have to start incorporating like what is driving you, but going from, one agent to two agents to three agents to four agents, continuing to lead with profit, making sure that the money is really there. You will always outspend yourself if you're not careful. So I think having a prospecting base, I mean, I've never coached with Mike Ferry, but I have followed his business model to a T. I love how he runs a business. I hate how he does not love people and they are chattel. And that is not fair to me in this business, in a customer service business. Whereas, his son maybe thinks about it differently. Right. And this isn't, to bag on coaches, but there's a certain coaches that provide a certain level of value that I think are very helpful, that make sense. And if we think prospecting is hard, try going back to a job, and that's really hard. I worked at a call center. That's how I paid for my college. I mean, I literally worked at American Express in a call center. And if you want to go do that, go do it. But you can also earn 30 grand a year and have people say F you also, rather than get a commission check and earn 10 times that, you know what I mean? So it's just interesting. But as you grow with those models and when you have more people come on, that responsibility is difficult, right? Because now you're trying to bring in business as well as manage people. People want you and your time, but you can't give it to them. And that's probably the biggest challenge. You're wearing every single hat for literally, 3 years. I think people can cut it down. I think I was a little bit slow, but at the same time, it is just like pushing a rock uphill. And it is just hard, and it is not for everyone. I don't think a mega team is for everybody. I think that it's what is true to you, because it may make sense just to have two showing agents, somebody else, because you love sitting and meeting with clients. And that actually makes the most sense for your business model. You, Lars, for example, you have this ability to look in a matrix and get lost in it for a day, and you're totally okay with it. Whereas if it was me, I would look at that for seriously 15, 20 minutes, and then I'd want to gouge my eyes out, it's just living in that happy place of where they're at. And I think that's a thing that I've learned. I probably would have made some changes. I probably would have gotten showing agents first. I probably wouldn't have gotten full buyer's agents. I think I would have been a lot more profitable. I would have worked out a lot of kinks. I think that I would have learned how to transition them better. I think I would have had a better training program in place. And those are things for me personally. I think other people hiring a buyer's agent, they have a better system set up than maybe I did. Mm-hmm. And then, once the buyer side was set up and we had some consistency, I believe that year I had closed, we did 151 total sales, and I did, I think, 90 of those. And that was with a team of 3 buyer's agents and myself. And I felt the exact same way. I felt the exact same way as when I did the 48 on my own, because I had done, I think I did 90 plus listings. I think it was 92. I think it was 92 listings exactly. or 92 complete properties, because there was a few select buy people that just happened to come up and whatever. But majority were listings. And that's when I said, okay, now I need my replacement. So I went on 32 appointments with her. She took the buy side rate. She ended up doing 90 listings last year. And then, this is again, the next, that next level. So I stepped out that year. I literally just did the things I wanted to do. Like we ended up writing a book that was published called Winning Real Estate. It was co-authored with 8 agents. That was a cool thing I always wanted to do. Not pay a book person, have them write it. These things we get in the mail. It wasn't that. It was full on write your story, right? That was really cool. I was able to go to seminars and different things that I wanted to explore, just different opportunities. I spent more time with my kids and family than I ever had, right? And there was obviously an 8-month or 9-month time frame where I was in all the time, but then I started stepping to the side a lot more, and kind of being man, it's kind of running itself. And so I did these other things. I did some projects on the investment side, because I really do love the development and investment type stuff and projects. I ended up getting a 60-unit project with a builder, and then another 11-unit project with a builder. And then, you know what I mean? These things that are big, high value things, but I kind of abandoned the team. That listing partner quit, and I was dumped with 25 listings on my lap in June. Now, the summer was the worst summer, because people were upset, people were mad, and it was I have 25 listings of people I don't know. And they're you have 4 listing appointments tomorrow. And I was oh my gosh, here I'm back. So lesson learned was you know what? The challenge is, if you keep it small, it can be tidy and nice and your culture can be great. But I've learned that really, if you keep it small, you do not create opportunity for others, and you have to grow. And so I had kind of set that up, because I realized that even before, probably 6 months before that happened, I was look, we're either going to scale back or we're going to scale forward. And that's when I was we ended up saying, you know what, we have to figure this out. And so I came up with a whole nother game plan. But while I was creating that, I didn't have 2 or 3 people deep on different levels, because you'll never expand and grow from there.
Let me have you go on a couple things. One thing I just want to mention to anyone listening or watching is that there are some people that will listen to this and say, did he really just say that he got 25 listings and he had 4 appointments the next day and he was complaining about it? He really just say that? And so the point I'm trying to make is that as you grow in business or anything, the thing that used to be a major accomplishment becomes the thing that's a setback, because you're looking to the next level. So when you're just starting in the business, and you're figuring out who do I call, and you figure out how to put a call list together and figure out how Mojo works, and then you get it working and you set your first appointment, you're oh man, that's amazing. I set a buyer appointment. They met me and I sold my house. And then you're oh, this sucks. I gotta, figure out the systems to be able to grow beyond this. And so it's just interesting that, and that's the point. I want to take you back to the failure point with your listing agent leaving, but I want to take you back to the first intensive that you went to. And it was a very clear why, because you mentioned that you sort of lost your why in this journey a little bit, and it sort of hurt you a little bit to grow from where you are to the next level, because you kind of, money's great, time, before you had to go back to production, timing, time was good. Go back to what was really driving you. When we first met and when you came to that first intensive, we did an exercise where we touched on the why. Take us back to that failure point. What was that? What did that failure feel like in your business where you weren't giving time to your children, and what got you to push through that time?
Yeah. So the main thing is I was, literally it was being a failure at home. you had a great business? Because even at that time, the income was great. I mean, closing that many deals and so forth, income is great, but you were never home. And so me having time and quality time with family was just so important to me, and finding a way to do that. And one of the things that I do remember, which wasn't at that first intensive, but was probably like on, I don't know, maybe even a year later. And this is something that I've always remembered. And we talked about it. And because we always have these bigger goals, more, it's just, sometimes it's the biggest blessing and the biggest curse, right? Is this growth that you want to be. But one of the two things I actually want to mention is one of them was, you and I were actually talking about goals and different things. And I just said, the problem is with these goals, I see these goals taking away from my family time, which is really where I want to be. And you said something that was like off the cuff, and you said, the problem is you're designing this business around your business, and you're not designing it around your life. And it really made a huge difference of like, oh my gosh, like I've got to make that transition. And then the only other item that I think is really important that you had mentioned is that, and this is down the road when I was out of production, where I was starting to set these goals. We kind of talked about the same thing when we were talking, and you said, hey, what if you didn't do more business? You didn't grow anymore, but you actually only spent more time with your family. And that was the overall goal.
Yeah.
And I think those perspectives are really important, because you being away, seeing that and being able to look back 4 or 5 years saying, how could I have done it different? It just is a lot different, because you can now see back of like the value of you spending that time with your family versus the extra 100,000 in your bank account, and where that value is. So those things have always been forefront. So to this day, for example, like I need to be here at 7:30 in the morning every morning with my team, and I need to lead them and do those things. But guess what? I have told them I am home every morning. I get the kids up, I make them breakfast, I get them to school. Like that is important to me. And it is not productive for my business, because the morning is the most important time. For people listening, they're like, that is the dumbest thing you could do, especially in a high performance environment. But to me, at night, that's when they have the homework. That's when they've had a hard day. That's when they've had some things, right? Like it's just different conversations then than when I am with them in the morning. They're having, they're happy, they're excited, they're fun. I walk with them to school. Like that is the time to me that is important. And I could change my business. I know I could, but that is just, I'll never get these days back. I want them to remember that their dad walked with me to school like most all of the time. Right. And there's these little things where I'm not okay with it. I'm just, and I think even like with folks that have, listing appointments in-house, they know they're giving up business because they're having them in-house. I think that makes sense for them. And I've learned that you have to design your business in a way that makes you happy, because if you're not happy, like, I think life's just too short. Like you can just do a lot of things.
Yeah. So knowing what you know now, regarding what's happened in the last 6 months and you being back in production, what do you see in the business? What weaknesses do you see in the business that maybe you could have strengthened up, or what could you have done to prepare for a key player leaving?
So what I would say is, number one, there is a myth to the 7th level, right, that you read in Gary Keller's book. And the myth is that it sounds like you can step away like a CEO, and you can, but the organization has to be massive. Other people have the same ambition as you and driving it forward. So, and the myth, I don't want to say it's a myth that it cannot happen, but I do believe you can step to the side. You have to keep a pulse on all of the details in the business. So for example, on the listing side, what I learned, we had done a little over 100 listings last year. I learned that the way we went in, the things we were saying, the listing process, there was just some details that were off. So I've been on with the new listing partner a little over 30 listings. Now he has gone out and taken 7 listings at 7% and a 795, whereas last year they were like really combined around 6%. I mean, we probably had some 7%, but I bet you it was probably 8 or 9 of them, out of the 100. Now we're essentially consistently taking it. But I had to walk through that process of, here, I'm going to do it. Let's do it. You do it. And man, it made a huge difference. And because from a profitability standpoint, as the market is changing, it changed here too, right? Like as far as many leads that are coming in and so forth, like you only have to take 75% less listings if you're charging that amount. And that's a huge difference. If the market shifted 25%, that's huge. But if we keep the same model, it doesn't make a difference. Our volume will be about the same, but our transactions will be less. And again, that's just because of changing one thing. So keeping a pulse on those details is important. Making sure that there's a literally creating that whole E-Myth franchise model, sitting down with your person on the subjects and saying, hey, today, next Monday, I want you to carve out 2 hours and write the process out of how you do this and how you do this. And I mean, I even have in my bag a brand new one that I haven't even reviewed, but like it goes through, part of our processes. And I think having that next person step in and read that training manual is so important, as well as keeping a pulse on those details as the market continues to adjust, whether it be competitors coming in, price changes, interest rates, and making sure that you're leading them in the right way. At the end of the day, it's just real estate. Mm-hmm. But helping someone get to where they need to be is really important, because that perspective is your number one value. And they need to know that.
Yeah, that's really good. And we're seeing in a lot of teams, even with respect to just the basics of new business development, we're not seeing, we're seeing team leaders that aren't following the I do it, we do it, you do it model. They're just sort of abdicating, like, you guys need to be generating new business. I don't need to do it. I'm the team leader, and their team is like 2 agents in themselves. And they think, you mentioned you got out of production the year you did 206 transactions. January 2012, I think we did it was the year we did either 180 or 250. And it might have been the January of the year we did 248. And that's the year I stepped out of production. I forget which year it was. Stepped out of production completely. And it's being able to do that thing as long as it takes. You mentioned 3 years of doing every job. And you could do it a little bit quicker. 3 years is about right, where you're a very busy and productive agent, and you know how to do all the jobs of real estate agent at a very high level. And then it's a 3-year journey. That's why, Real Estate B School says it's a 3-year program with a 1-year commitment. It's 3 years, because I know in 3 years we can transform the way you do business from where you are now, selling 50 homes yourself, and you're going to lose your marriage and your health is for crap, to getting to 200 transactions where it's still hard. It's just hard in a different way. And you're not used to it because you've challenged yourself, over that 3-year period.
Well, you need that year also so that you can just consider that leverage, like knowing that there is leverage available so your business can actually grow better, and be stronger. But it needs it has to be constant and never-ending improvement. Every single step of the way. We're always changing things, we're always updating things. And I think that has been the secret to success, but you're right. Like that year of, even if they're in, listening to your coaching and stuff for a year, if all they got out of it is like, look, there's something here I can actually leverage so I can go home. I mean, it's probably been successful.
Yeah, and one other thing you mentioned, because it sounds like almost the same amount of appointments you went on with your last listing partner that you did with this new listing partner. I remember when my first attempt at getting out of production was the I had done it for like 3 years. The we do it was like 4 appointments. I'm like, good to go. I was so happy. And then I let him go on 105 appointments before I like, he only listed 30. Like maybe there's something to look at here. And so I did it really wrong. And it's just funny that you mentioned that. It really is just slowing it down. That's one thing. Peterson and I were at a Boomtown Unite conference, and we heard a speaker talk about that. I do it, we do it, you do it. And it really is. It's the point at which you don't want to do that. You are so done with production that you don't want to go on 32 appointments together. And you don't want to have them take notes while you're presenting and then take those notes and have your assistant transcribe them and create this is the way we do it here. This is how I can 92% of the time get the commission I want with the transaction fee 100% of the time. Then they can't make up the thing that nobody's going to accept the transaction fee, and no, the last 96 appointments, 95 paid it. And I gave up one because the guy was poor or something, who knows.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. Let's talk about, you touched on it a little bit, but what was the moment of truth? Was there a moment where like a light bulb came off and you realized that something had to give and sort of catapulted you to make the right decisions to be able to scale this thing? That might be helpful for others to hear.
I mean, the issue is you can do anything in a small amount of time. And I think people need to understand that you have to give up a season and you can create something that is different than whatever everybody else has, but you do have to pay the price. I mean, I keep Vince Lombardi's quote right next to me because it's the number one thing I always look at. And it's his speech of what it takes to be number one. And it just says you've got to pay the price. And it is not fun. It is not easy. Everybody will ditch out, but if you do stick to it, you can accomplish whatever you want. But it's putting it in your schedule and being relentlessly focused. I mean, I don't think I've been the best at it. Like, you have to have a good wife and a good spouse or a good friend, because they need to understand you're trying to accomplish something that 99% of your industry does not do. I think the statistic is what, 15% of, or 85% of agents don't have an assistant, right? It's like only 15% of us even have an assistant, and then you start going down the line of other stuff, and it just gets complicated as you're running a business in an industry. And so I would say number one is know that it's a process. Two, I would say wherever you're at, be patient. Like, you're always wanting to get it done by the end of that year. And you just have to say, like, this is going to be a journey that I'm okay. I would just say with my family, I'd just be like, look, I'm going to be home late Wednesdays and Thursdays. And I'd make those my late nights. And I just slowly started making decisions. And I still had to go back. Like, I had to call Christina Valkanoff. And she's still in production, does amazing work. And I called her and I was like, look, how do you keep your schedule right? Because mentally, I need to be reminded about a schedule when I was back in that listing stuff. And I think making sure you're surrounded by folks that can help you just get a different perspective will help you realize truly how lucky you are. The next thing is just having something in place that really is important to you. If you're making over $30,000 a year, 99% of the population would trade places with you right now. And knowing how blessed and lucky and the gratitude of where you are is super important. I have lived in that gap my whole life, but I have a different perspective when I get there. I go to whenever we do, when we're having our team meetings and we're going through what is going great. If somebody says nothing, I go to worldstatistics.com and we look at how many people died today of hunger and bad water. We started a thing where, $100 for every closing goes to like a child in need. I've been involved with that Amigos of Honduras for 10 years. And that now they know that's a part of who we are, right? Like having something in place that you're like, look, I need to do good business, but like we need to create something that's bigger than yourself, because you're going to, eventually that's what it's going to push towards. You're going to hit your goals, and then it has to be more. So I think it's important to just keep in mind, be patient, but also just know like how lucky and blessed you are too. And I think it's so hard for us, right? Like it's such a constant reminder, but I mean, and I don't want to get religious, but I remember when I used to, every single commission check, I used to like say thanks. Like I'd bow my head and I'd say, thank you so much. Like this is such a gift. I don't do that anymore, like, and I don't want to say that I'm not thankful, but it's just different, right? Like taking 207 commission checks every time, I should be doing that. Just remembering, and if you're not religious, like it's the same difference. Like we are lucky to have what we have, and we have to take that into account. And the last thing I'd probably say is know that you're never at the end. You're always growing. You're always progressing. Like right now, obviously, I want to be at 3 and 5 and 1,000 deals, but the problem is if I don't master the social media game, I don't know where we're going to be in 2, 3, and 5 years. So like I hired a full-time marketing person, which I would not recommend to anyone. I don't think it's a great cost. But for me, like I need somebody in-house to like help me figure this out now. So if in 3 to 4 to 5 years, it makes sense. And so those are little things that to me are important, that I think that wherever you need knowledge, you have to make it your craft. It has to be, exactly what to do and how to do it. People look to you for leadership, but to make your business the best, like you should be the number one person that they know what to do. And I think that's the foundation of a strong business, that even if people leave, that you have to be the one that can lead them. And you can use that time to become the best version of yourself and serve others at the highest level, because you've continued to grow.
Yeah. Awesome. So when I say growing a business is 80% mindset, what does that mean to you?
Dude, I swear it'd be 90%. I mean, it is everything. Getting up out of bed, I think, if people can agree, is sometimes just painful. Thinking about what you have to go through today. And if you don't have your head straight, I mean, you are defeated before you ever go in. People feel it. They feel it on the phone. They feel it in your transactions. They feel with how you talk to them. I mean, I think that you have to have, I think that is everything in this business. In fact, I'm trying to think, is Tony Robbins I think it's Tony Robbins almost has that, isn't it? Like he says, 80% is 80% is mindset, 20% is business, right? That's
right. Tactics is 20% and 80% is psychology. That's where I got that from.
I was going to say, you have to hit that ground running, knowing the direction you're going, because there is too many ways you can get derailed, off your track, think about something else. I mean, there is something important about knowing exactly where you're going, because it's just, I just feel like we're in a war, and it's like you're going to have casualties, but you have to know that you're going to win the war. Because if you feel like you're going to lose, like I hate to say it, like it's easy to lay down and just be like, it's going to be over soon anyway, so I'll just at least enjoy my time, Yeah. You've got to be the guy running out in battle, being like, know where you're going exactly, because that's the difference between you and your competitors. It's just too easy. It's too easy to get down, So you got to control that head.
I pulled up a quote from Tony. Business requires an unbelievable level of resilience inside you. And I tell everybody the chokehold on the growth of your business is always the leader. It's always your psychology and your skills. 80% psychology, 20% skills. All right. So we have got about how many minutes here? About 5 minutes left. And I'm going to go through just some rapid fire questions. Give me the first answer that comes to your brain. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. So what keeps you up at night when it comes to your business?
Is the right answer everything? No. I would say first thing I would say of is, are my people taken care of, and do they have opportunity for growth? And I always think about, like, what are the systems and processes that I need to improve to make this business better?
Awesome. What were you most afraid of when you were building a real estate team?
I'd go broke.
What was the best advice you've ever received about business?
Rick Davidson. I did a little podcast with him, and I interviewed him. And he was the CEO of over 104,000 agents. So it was really important to me to hear this. He said, take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth. Listen. Just sit back and always listen.
That's really good. I like that one. Can you share a daily or weekly habit that you believe contributes to your success?
I always keep my goals in front of me. And this is the thing, like, I just want to be number one. I want to dominate, and whatever it takes. And that can be very healthy, but it can also be it can be unhealthy too. So keeping it balanced with friends, family, different people that you keep it in check, I guess.
What, for someone that is looking to go down this business growth path, busy, top producing agent, looking to scale a team, maybe they don't have the experience to fall back on, what's one book you would recommend to them?
Oh, man. What part of the journey?
Kind of just going from busy agent to growing a sustainable business. Kind of like in the not the early days for you, but the year you went from 60 to 100 to 150 in those growth years.
I think there's a couple books that were really healthy for me, that made me just put things in perspective of, like, sometimes you feel like a lone ranger, and people build these companies that have 200 employees in 3 years, right? Like, that just happens. And so I would say one, The Ultimate Sales Machine, Chet Holmes, really, really good getting your mind around it. Truly can be a duplicatable business, and you can really love on your clients and provide this culture around it. There's another book called, just give me a second and I'll give it to you. The third book is E-Myth. E-Myth is fantastic to get your mind around, the person that is the entrepreneur versus, you just start making these decisions of, like, where am I stuck and how have these other people do it? It almost gives you permission, right? I think that the one thing I would want to say that I'd want people to hear is that at every part of the stage, we feel inadequate. But inadequacy is the gate. And that's what opens the door. And for so long, I had fear going into the next thing. And I don't want to say fear, but I was just like, what is this going to cost me? Is this going to be an issue? But I've learned that when you feel inadequate, that's when everybody quits. And it's actually the gate that opens the door to success, right? But that third book I wanted to mention to you, it's called, Built to Sell. It's a book called Built to Sell, and it's a very easy read. It's super small, and it just takes into account this effect of, like, just taking out all the fluff, focusing on one thing, and this guy that ends up kind of selling his business, and just the process of him doing everything to kind of leveraging And it just creates a mindset of like I can do this, and this is how others have done it. And I think those are some pretty good books that helped me mentally when I had kind of these breakdowns.
Yeah, and the point is, E-Myth, the point is you may never sell it, and that's not the point. The point is you're building it to sell it, so it's sustainable and it doesn't revolve around you. All right, last question. If you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently?
So there's this really cool snow cone shack in Hawaii. I probably would have bought it and hung out on the beach and sold snow cones. Not really. I would have given myself permission to be patient, right? I would have spent more time at home, because maybe I would have done 10 less transactions, and really it wouldn't have made a difference because it went to taxes anyway, right? I probably would have done a showing agent. I think that would have been a really good decision. I didn't know what I didn't know. And so going back, I don't have regrets, but I think that's a good decision for certain people at a certain point, depending on personality, location, price point, there's a number of factors. So don't go get a showing agent, just take a look back, all the details. I would have gone bigger thinking from the beginning. In my mindset, it was just get out of production, do developments, do coaching, do other things that you can spend your time doing that you like doing, right? As opposed to saying, what do I need to do with this business? Can we serve 1,000 people? And what does that look like? Because if I don't provide opportunity for others, really they're going to be stuck. And I've gotten to a point, and like that's been great, but now I haven't even served anybody else along the journey.
Yeah.
So those are some things I would change. Just perspective here versus then, though, is just totally different, right?
Yeah, and it's be patient, play a long game, and those extra, like you said, that extra transaction a month is, it's taking 10 to 12 hours away from your family that month.
I would also say take the time to love on others. Like, I think I do a good job, and I really try to like take care of folks. I mean, I feel like I genuinely like do love people, but man, I need to tell them I care for them more and that they appreciate them more. And, I think that, what is it? The average person want to hear it. They need to hear it at least once a week. Just how much and then that's just mind boggling. That, really if we to take our business, sometimes during that journey, if I was to die and have a heart attack, which I thought I was going to have a couple times, I guess, not really, it felt like it, right? Mentally. Frankly, some of those people wouldn't show up at my funeral, right? Because sometimes you were an a-hole, and that just isn't worth it. So how can I make my day better? More about what can I do and how can I serve those that I'm working with? That mindset, like, just like you said, the 25 listings, like those first 4 listings, I was not my best self. Like, there was I didn't take listings on some of those, like, because I was like in the wrong mindset. And like literally within, 3 or 4 days, you're fine. But I was like, okay, how can I really serve this person? Like, how can I help this person? And lean into them. Man, all of a sudden it's like the person there was like, oh my gosh, they signed or whatever. And then doing that same thing with the people that you work with, doing that same thing with your family. Like, I would say another rule that I would recommend is as soon as you feel like you need to leave 10%, meaning when you've almost depleted all of your energy, you're too far. You need to leave at least 10% at the end of the day for your family. You'd go home and you want to kick up your feet or take a rest or just take a break. They need you. They want you. You've been gone grinding. Leave when you have 10% at least left over, because I didn't do that. And that was a mistake, because then you're not nice. You're quick to anger. You're not helpful. And your mate or whoever the person that you're with, like, they don't get all of you, and that is not fun. Like, they're contributing as much as you are in different ways for you to have that opportunity to build what you want to build. Like they're truly allowing you to be completely selfish, and you need to leave that extra energy to do the dishes, to do some laundry, to do the kids' homework so that they can take a break, go to the gym. And my wife works, you know, like she worked through this whole process. They went from 30 employees to 3,000 at her work. She manages 42 people. Like, you know what I mean? Like she is a hard driver too, but she's also a mom. And so just remember to love on those folks. Sorry, got a little.
No, it's awesome. And I'm not going to have you tell the story, but fly the kite when you're a kid. I won't have you tell it, but I still remember that moment. If your kid comes and tells you to fly a kite with them, there is nothing more important than flying the kite. Justin, you're just a good dude and with an open heart and willing to bear yourself for B School and everyone that watches this. So we appreciate you more than, to your point. I don't tell you every 7 days how much I appreciate you. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. That's 28 days right there. So just play this. Be good to go.
Picking up for it, dude.
All right, brother. Be good. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, man.
All right. See you guys.